Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you very much. I'll do it again then. People want a bit of audience participation. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. Fantastic. Hopefully you're recharged and now joining us for the second session today, which is all focusing on productivity. My name's Tim Embley. I work for Costain and look after research, innovation, emerging technology across the business. And I'm delighted today to be part of what is a very important topic in the industry. Through my role in research and innovation, I engage quite extensively with government and different organisations around the industry. And one of the big topics is productivity, but it's also linked in with other important topics around carbon, levelling up, and efficiency. But one of the big challenges, certainly from a government perspective, is in terms of how productive the industry is. And since 1997, certainly government have seen very little shift on that productivity, sometimes in some years going down. So it's a big challenge for the industry with very challenging situations that we have to deal with in times of uncertainty. And certainly with the levelling up agenda, it's clear that from a government perspective, small changes in areas of improvement in geographical areas, small investments in those areas could actually put £50 billion back into the economy in terms of new jobs and opportunities in those local areas. And that is very much driven by people in the room and the organisations that then facilitate that through the infrastructure and the support that we put into those local communities. So that's enough from me in terms of today's session. I'm going to invite some people to the stage just to talk a little bit from their perspective around productivity and what they're doing in their own organisations to drive the industry forward. But as we go through today, I'd like just to say a couple of thanks to people, specifically the speakers, but also Hitachi for supporting this event, and yourselves. So there is an audience participation section, so if you're not logged on to Slido, please log into Slido, and the details will be on the slides. They're also on the table as well. You can access through the QR code. And at the end of today's session, there will be opportunity to engage the speakers through that panel discussion. We'll taking questions through Slido as well. So just in terms of the structure for today's session, we'll be inviting two people to the stage just to present their perspective. We're delighted to be joined by four industry facilitators that will be looking after the conversation. So there'll be opportunity to have a conversation in tables around productivity. And then we'll be inviting those people back to the stage to have a panel conversation. So hopefully that fits with your expectations. So without further ado, I'd like to invite two speakers to the stage. So the first two speakers is John Brennington from Hitachi Solutions, who are kindly supporting the event today, and Rory Smith from Microsoft, who are going to both talk about productivity.
Fantastic, thank you, Tim. And I think it is still morning. Good morning, everyone, and thanks very much for allowing me the space here. Now, the reason we've been able to negotiate this short slot, which is very useful to us, is because we're quite engaged in the sector, but a lot of people think we're a bit of a well-kept secret and don't actually know what we do. So we'll talk about that a little bit in this slot, explain a couple of examples of what we do and why we're here, and then hopefully facilitate and support the sessions as we go forward. So I'm going to be joined by my esteemed colleague, Rory from Microsoft. We work very closely together. We both work across the construction sector, the built environment sector, as Microsoft call it, because we all have slightly different names for the same sector. And we're going to take you through just a couple of examples of what we actually do, and therefore why we're here. Now, in terms of Hitachi, in fact, I forgot what order my slides were in, so there's a great start. Before I talk about Hitachi, the three things we're actually going to go through briefly, I am going to introduce, I suppose, our part of Hitachi, which is probably slightly different than you might recognize, and talk a little bit about our partnership with Microsoft. We've worked very closely together for a long time, and I'll just embellish on that a little bit. And then I'm going to start to look at some of the areas where we work in partnership with Microsoft, and hand over to Rory to take us through some more detail of an example of some of the tools that we actually put to use. And the way we partner together is that Microsoft basically create the fabulous tools that we work with, and then we help our clients turn those into solutions that fit and hopefully address something specific that they're looking to address. And that can be anything from a full-blown business application replacement to small point-of-use apps that address a specific problem as we go forward. And then what Rory's also going to do is show a couple of examples that we've put together recently that are just very short examples, just to bring to life the kind of ideas we can have and the kind of things we can help with. And hopefully then we may talk to some of you later in the day if you have your own ideas for where we might put something similar together, where it would help you. So, thinking of Hitachi, blank sheet of paper is probably a great way to start, because I imagine it's not necessarily obvious why we're here, because I'm not from the construction machinery division or the power tools or some of the things that you might come across more frequently. We also work a lot on the development side. You may come across us in terms of infrastructure work. Obviously, we do work with Arrival on new electric buses that we're using now across the UK. A lot of us now get to ride on some of our trains, which is great. Obviously working on GWR, LNER that I use, up in ScotRail as well. So we have I suppose it's a growing amount of rolling stock now across the UK. We get involved in power generation. I mean, in other countries, we're involved in nuclear facilities. In this country, we almost were, but it stopped a few years ago when the funding didn't quite get finally agreed, as some of you probably know. And Hitachi withdrew from the UK in terms of nuclear power. But we have a lot of involvement across a whole spread. But what a lot of people might not realize is that we are actually one of the world's 10 largest technology companies. And we're not always perceived as that. And over a third of that technology is actually IT systems. Might not be all that exciting to a lot of you, but it's what I do for a living, so forgive me. I get quite interested in it. And as Hitachi Solutions, we've been a really close partner with Microsoft for a while. Hitachi Solutions is the part of Hitachi that works on system implementations. We're a service provider, and we only implement Microsoft solutions. We chose strategically to partner with Microsoft more than 10 years ago now, as their business applications grew, and work really closely together. We're also, of course, across the world, one of their biggest customers at the same time, just because of the size of Hitachi. So it's been a really tight relationship all the way through. And what we wanted to do today is just to show you an example of the kind of things that we do together. Now, we've been working with Rory and his colleagues, and we have some other Microsoft colleagues with us today as well. We've been looking at the construction sector for quite some time. Some of you may recall us bidding for work within your organization. Some of you may recall us winning some work across some of your organizations. So we've been around for a while, but we've always been a little bit under the radar. And so we're going to start, we decided this year is the start of the change to that, as we come out of lockdown, as a lot of us did, that we've reselected the core markets where we really want to be known. And so construction is that one. So what we're going to talk about here are just some of the areas of priority we have. So the first 2 or 3 here are probably what's historically been our bread and butter. So major systems, financial, supply chain, commercial operations systems is kind of what we put through. We have a bedrock of solutions through there. But today we're going to look at the last couple, talking about how we use some of the tool set that Microsoft now have, which was in its infancy before lockdown and has really taken prevalence now, to do very, very quick pieces of work with point-of-use apps, and how we can apply those to specific problems. And Rory's going to take us through and show us a couple of examples of what we've done in combination with some of Microsoft's clients here in the UK, just to put some examples together. Now, what we're going to show you isn't a portfolio of fixed things that you're either interested in or not. They are examples of what the tool can do. And what we'd love to find out through the day are ideas for more examples of what we can put together. So be really interested in feedback as we go through. But with that, the overall intro is done, you'll be pleased to know, and Rory's actually going to take us through some of what we've done. So I will hand over to Rory.
Great. Thanks, John. Good morning, and thanks very much. And I'm going to start by recalling one of the quotes that one of our keynote speakers said this morning. And the lady came up and she said, we didn't come here to fear the future, we came here to shape it. And that is absolutely apt in what I'm going to be talking to you about this morning and what I'm going to be showcasing through some of the apps that you'll shortly see on the video. But before I do that, maybe I just want to set some context for why I want to talk to you about Microsoft, why I want to talk to you about productivity, and how both Microsoft and our partner Hitachi can help you deliver on productivity and innovate within your own organizations. Well, certainly the feedback that I get from working with you guys in the construction sector is that you're under intense pressure. And some of those pressures have always been there, whether it be cost pressures for rising costs in labor and materials, whether it might be regulatory change and a new Building Safety Act as an example that's come in, forcing you to change and operate in a different way. There might be pressures around environmental and sustainability, compliance, or even the competency of people were certainly two threads that were talked about this morning. But ultimately, we understand at Microsoft across the sector, you're under pressure to do more with less. And certainly what I'm seeing when I'm working with enterprise-scaled construction organizations across the industry is that the demand for innovation is actually outstripping what you can do in the back office. So by that I mean on the front line, we're having to innovate on our sites, we're having to improve productivity, keep our workers' safety. The way that we operate is changing so quickly, our back office IT teams can't actually keep up with the demand and provide point solutions which address that particular need. And quite often what I'm seeing is organizations, CIOs will go out and empower their organizations to buy point solutions, which maybe fix a very specific problem, but those are costly, they take a while to deploy, and then you're going to be paying for a maintenance team or a team of developers to support those going further forward. So Microsoft is really focused on actually modernizing the way in which we can scale innovation and modernizing the way that we can drive productivity, safety, and efficiencies throughout the construction sector. But how are we going to actually achieve that, and how do we do that? Well, we have a suite of tools called our low-code, no-code productivity set, and this really enables enterprise innovation at scale for all of your employees, all the way from chief executive level and the CEO office, all the way down to frontline worker at a construction site or a project delivery site. And the idea is here that we're empowering everybody to use the tool sets. These aren't for IT teams to use, they're not for professional developers to use. Of course, they can use them, but what we're really doing here is opening up the doors to enable your frontline workers to develop solutions that can be deployed that improve safety. So there's a couple of different components to our low-code platform. First of all, you can see at the very top of the circular diagram we have Power Apps. Power Apps enable us to build solutions, whether that be on a mobile app or on a tablet device. We can build an app that consumes data. We also have apps that allow our end users to go through a process. So if you think about the safety reporting process, maybe I'm on a construction site, I can use my mobile app or my tablet device to quickly report a near-miss incident or report a safety accident that's happened. That can then be pushed through to our site safety manager or our back office staff, who then use a Power App to take that investigation through a defined process to meet compliance. We have Power Automate. Power Automate is used to streamline operational services. A good example of automation, if you think about receiving an invoice from a supplier who's done some work on a site and they want to start that payment process, you could use AI Builder to scan that invoice in. You could do your three-way matching with your finance or your ERP solution, and then you could kickstart that payment process. So no need to key in invoices anymore. We also have Power Virtual Agents. I call them Power Bots because I think it's a much cooler name. Power Bots allow us to have a conversational description with our customers and our suppliers, and offer a different way to actually engage with people either at the site level or in our supply chain. We also have Power BI, which give our leadership teams, our project teams, our directors, and our site managers teams insights to make different operational decisions about how they're delivering their projects. And then finally, we have Power Pages. Power Pages are customized websites which you and your users can build to offer engagement, again, with either your suppliers or your customers. A good example of that might be having a Power Page for a supplier to log on to upload maybe a risk assessment or apply for a permit to work, or to do their supplier onboarding or their project site induction before they even get to site. Ultimately, though, what this solution allows us to do is for our IT teams to stay focused on setting governance and guardrails, and it allows our citizen developers, our frontline workers, to build apps that actually solve problems out on site. Just one more slide before I show some video content and some example apps. I want to introduce a hypothetical organization called Contoso Construction. Now, Contoso Construction, I want you to imagine that they're a large UK-based construction organization. Maybe they have 6,500 employees, deliver 1,500 or so projects at any given time. In the last year, they've had really strong financial performance. They've grown, year-on-year growth is good, cash flow is good, they've driven lots of revenue, and they continue to deliver projects for their customers. But despite the strong financial performance, there's been a rising trend of employee incidents out on the sites. And the knock-on impact of that is that we're having to bring in costed labor as replacement workforce, and we're actually having to spend lots of time investigating incidents and coming up with innovative solutions to prevent them happening again. So Jessica, who's the operations delivery director, brought in Microsoft to deliver a transformation program where she used Microsoft Power Platform and the low-code solution to build and deploy some apps to make some improvements on the ground. So the first solution and the first scenario, certainly feedback from working with this sector over the last 2 years or so, is around the task-based risk assessment process, which traditionally out on site has always been quite labor intensive. It's been heavy administrative focus on quantification of risk and focuses on actually completing the paperwork and scoring. What the solution does that I'm about to show you in a minute is actually moves our users more towards focusing on the control measures and actually implementing those control measures to bring about safety improvements. So I'm just going to ask the gentleman at the back to play the video, and you'll see here a suite of apps that we built using the low-code solution in partnership with Hitachi for task-based risk assessment. So the first app that we have is a mobile app, a Power App, where we're getting a contractor to submit a new task-based risk assessment. They can see the site at which they need to come and work at. So in this case, we've looked up on a mobile device the locations of the site and where we are on the site. And then you can see the user's going to start populating some descriptions of the risk. So these are just free text fields, but you'll also see we have a progress bar across the top of the mobile app. It's really intuitive, simple to use, and of course, it's highly configurable to fit your process. So whilst this is an example app, might not answer all the questions or have everything that you want to capture, you can configure the solution to be able to do this. The user can then describe the likelihood and the severity, and then they can go ahead and they can determine the level of risk. Once that risk assessment has been done, when they get to site, in this example, maybe we've got a gate that needs to be unlocked and it's preventing us from accessing a site to actually get on, we can use mixed reality capability to actually capture the problem out on site. So in this example, maybe we can't take a delivery of steels from a lorry because the gate's locked, or maybe the site is unsafe to actually deliver the steels, whatever it might be. But using our mobile capabilities and offline capabilities, you can capture those issues that are happening out on site. You can take photos, videos, it's a very immersive experience. And then once you've captured and labeled them, you could then submit them, and using a workflow, you could send those to a site manager. That site manager could be alerted to the issues that are out on site. They could come, or if they were in the back office, they could then go and provide remedial action or go and manage those risks. And you can see here we've got some visual descriptors of the risk ratings and the different scoring solutions. So that's just one example of a site-based task risk assessment. Offline capabilities are available. It's thrown me a little bit. Let's Just move you on one. There we go. You've got offline capabilities are absolutely available. And of course, that was all built on low code. It didn't require a professional developer to do that. That was one of our construction organizations that we've worked with previously who've built that solution in a matter of days rather than it requiring a heavy investment in terms of time, solution architecture to go ahead and build those particular apps. I'm just going to flick on a few slides, and I want to just go and show a second scenario now. This second scenario is for safety incident reporting, which continues to be a hot topic in the construction sector. And what you're going to see in just a few moments is a mobile application for reporting a safety incident out on site. So this might be, whether it's a mobile application or a tablet, the app is capable of working on any device and it's got offline capabilities. You can see in here on our first screen our injured person, the site manager is reporting the incident details. They're very quickly capturing the location, the date, the time, the description of the incident. In this case, somebody's been burnt whilst they were doing welding out on site. Up in the top right-hand screen, we have a progress bar showing us how we're progressing through the different forms. We can use a lookup to go and capture the injured person's information. And of course, if that's a contractor that's arrived at your site, we've got capabilities to pull the data from the gate line, clock in, clock out system. So we could bring that information in. And now you'll see the user is actually listing out the injured body parts, which will drive potentially our statutory reporting. And of course, you'll see in just a moment, we've got the capability to take photos to give a few more clues as to what's happened on that particular incident as well. And of course, you can build automated alerts and notifications. So if this particular injury type met statutory reporting capabilities or it needed onward reporting, of course, you can configure a workflow to a safety manager to prioritize that and then start the investigation process. And there we have the incident has now been submitted and sent through to that safety manager. Of course, that's a Power App. That's what we call a Canvas app for capturing and consuming data. You could then use another Power App to guide through that investigation process through a model-driven app to get your safety incident to a resolution and an outcome that drives enhancement and improvement. So hopefully today, this just given you a flavor for some of the potential opportunities that you have for innovating across the organization. Obviously, our presentation today is focused on safety and safety improvements and productivity. But do please come and talk to me on the stand if you've got other areas that you see potential for innovation. Be happy to talk about the Microsoft toolings and how we can help and support you with those moving forward.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Rory. And as you mentioned, the hook in here is really with productivity. And earlier in the year, we started working with Giri, the Get It Right initiative, and we've been inspired by the ideas that come out of that for how to improve productivity through. And on the one hand, promoting the ability to put your hand up and stop construction when there's something that you need to work on. And on the other, improving some of the hitherto paperwork processes that you might come across on site that are just more easily managed if we can capture the incidents and issues in these simple to use apps that pretty much anybody can use. You can put them on rugged devices where you can use big thumbs to kind of go through them. And the idea is to capture it so that you've got a record of it, you can process it more efficiently. And some of the time that's wasted waiting can be eliminated or certainly dramatically reduced. And those were the ideas behind here. But as I mentioned at the beginning, these are just ideas. We'd be delighted to hear of others or issues that you might have where you think, could something like this help me? So we're around the rest of the day. So any ideas, please do come forward. And thanks very much for listening. Thanks, Tim.